November 3rd. That date is marked in red on the calendars of thousands of astronomers around the world. NASA has confirmed that on that day, it will publish something that has been generating internal debates, closed meetings, and contradictory versions among the teams at the Goddard Institute for weeks. It's not about a distant galaxy or a potentially habitable exoplanet. It's something much closer, much stranger, and, according to some researchers, completely impossible. The James Webb Space Telescope, the most advanced instrument ever built to observe the cosmos, has captured a series of images that defy all known logic. In each of them appears the same object, 3I Atlas, that interstellar visitor that entered our solar system months ago and has been surprising the scientific community ever since. But there's a problem that no one at NASA wants to publicly admit yet. The images show 3I Atlas in places where it shouldn't be. We're not talking about a margin of error in orbital calculations or a small deviation in its trajectory. We're talking about simultaneous observations in regions of space separated by millions of kilometers, as if the same object could exist at multiple points in the universe at the same time. Before continuing, I want you to leave me something in the comments. Write the first word that comes to mind when you hear the name 3I Atlas. Just that, one word. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes could completely change your perception of what you think you know about that object. The first internal reports began circulating at the end of September. Engineers from the James Webb Spectral Analysis Program noticed something strange during a routine data review. The MIRI spectrometer team had captured an image of 3I Atlas on September 18 at 3:42 UTC. Nothing out of the ordinary up to that point. But when they cross-referenced that information with the NIRC PAM system records, they discovered that barely 7 hours later, the same object had been photographed in a completely different region of observable space. The position difference wasn't hundreds of thousands of kilometers, it was more than 4 million. A distance that no comet, asteroid, or known celestial body could travel in that time span, not even if it were accelerating at speeds approaching the physically impossible. At first, the technicians assumed it was an error in instrument calibration. The James Webb is an extraordinarily precise machine, but even the most advanced systems can suffer failures. They checked the sensors, recalibrated the coordinates, adjusted the image processing algorithms. But when they analyzed the data again, the result was identical. 3I Atlas kept appearing in two different places, with the same thermal signature, the same spectral reflectance pattern, and the same apparent structure. And then came the third image, and then the fourth, and finally the fifth. 5 different captures, 5 different locations, all recorded in a period of barely 72 hours. And in all of them, the same object shining with an intensity that doesn't match any predictive model of cometary behavior. The preliminary data that was leaked unofficially by personnel from the Goddard Institute shows something even more disturbing. The differences between each appearance aren't random. There's an underlying geometric pattern. If you draw lines connecting each point where 3I Atlas was detected, the resulting figure forms a kind of irregular pentagon, with the sun located almost exactly at its center. A configuration that, according to several astrophysicists consulted unofficially, has no known natural explanation. Think about this for a second. The universe operates under specific laws. Gravity dictates how celestial bodies move. The speed of light imposes absolute limits on how fast information, matter, or energy can travel. These rules aren't suggestions, they're the foundations upon which all modern physics is built. And yet, here we have an object that seems to be violating those rules systematically and repeatedly. How? Why? And what does that mean for everything we think we know about reality? The images captured by the MIRI spectrometer are particularly unsettling. This instrument is designed to observe in the mid-infrared spectrum, detecting the heat emitted by objects in space. When you analyze a typical comet with MIRI, what you see is a predictable thermal signature, the icy nucleus reflecting sunlight, a tail of sublimated gases, temperature variations consistent with distance from the sunday. But 3I Atlas doesn't show that behavior. Its thermal signature is extraordinarily uniform, almost artificial in its consistency. There are no significant thermal variations between its core and its edges. There's no clear evidence of gaseous sublimation. And strangest of all, its apparent temperature doesn't vary according to its distance from the sun, something that completely contradicts the basic principles of space thermodynamics. The captures from the NIRC system reveal even more puzzling details. NIRCam operates in the near-infrared, capturing high-resolution images that allow studying the physical structure of objects. In the photographs of 3I Atlas, you can distinguish what some analysts describe as geometric patterns on its surface. They're not craters or typical rock formations. They're straight lines, defined angles, symmetries that natural erosion doesn't produce. An optical engineer from the project, who asked to remain anonymous, stated in a specialized forum that the images show something that doesn't fit with any known natural body. According to his analysis, the light reflectance on 3I Atlas's surface suggests the presence of materials with unusual optical properties, possibly metallic alloys or highly organized crystalline compounds. Tell me in the comments, do you think we're facing a natural phenomenon that we simply don't understand yet? Or do you think there's something more at play? Write natural or artificial, according to what your instinct tells you. NASA's official reaction has been, at best, cautious, at worst, deliberately evasive. During the first 2 weeks after the anomalies were detected internally, there was no public communication about the subject. Zero mentions in press conferences, zero updates on the official James Webb channels, absolute silence. It wasn't until October 10 when the agency issued a brief, almost minimalist statement, announcing that on November 3 they would publish new observations of interstellar objects. Not a single word about the multiple locations. Not a mention of the thermal anomalies. Not the slightest acknowledgement that something extraordinary is happening. That silence didn't go unnoticed. Several independent astronomers began asking uncomfortable questions on social media and specialized forums. Why so much time between capturing the images and their publication? Why hasn't preliminary information been shared with the international scientific community, as is usual in this type of discovery? And why were some researchers who worked on the initial analysis abruptly reassigned to other projects? An astronomer from the European Observatory, in an unofficial interview, suggested there might be political pressures involved. When something challenges the established paradigm so radically, he said, institutions tend to move with extreme caution. Not because they're deliberately hiding information, but because they don't know how to communicate something they themselves don't fully understand. But there are others who don't share that benevolent view. There are those who believe NASA knows exactly what it's seeing, and that the delay in publishing the images is due to a careful filtering and editing process. Sources close to the project claim that the original images contain spectral data in certain bands that were deliberately removed before the planned publication. What did those bands show? Nobody knows for certain, but what is known is that every time technicians try to recalibrate the images or adjust the exposure to obtain greater detail, 3I Atlas appears with more clarity, more definition, and, according to some reports, with what appear to be internal structures visible at certain wavelengths. Imagine for a moment that you're part of the team analyzing these images. You spent years of your life studying physics, astrophysics, celestial mechanics. You trust mathematics. You trust the instruments. And suddenly you find yourself facing data that shouldn't exist. Data that suggests something in the universe doesn't work the way you thought. What do? Do you publicly admit you have no explanation? Or do you wait, investigate, look for some theory that can reconcile what you're seeing with everything you know? There are several theories attempting to explain the phenomenon of 3I Atlas's multiple locations. Some are more conservative, based on known physics. Others venture into speculative territories, but no less fascinating for that. The first hypothesis, and perhaps the most reassuring for the traditional scientific community, is that of systemic instrumental error. This theory suggests that the James Webb might be experiencing a type of interference that generates ghost images. Maybe high-energy cosmic radiation is affecting the sensors. Maybe there's a problem with the segmented mirrors that make up the telescope, creating internal reflections that are interpreted as separate objects. The problem with this explanation is that the technical teams have already ruled out most of these possibilities. The cross-verification systems, designed specifically to detect instrumental errors, show no anomalies. And more importantly, the images were captured by two completely different systems, MIRI and NIRCam, that operate with different technologies, process data independently, and don't share the same potential failure points. The second hypothesis is that of an unknown optical phenomenon. Some physicists have suggested that 3I Atlas might be interacting with the interstellar medium in a way that produces gravitational lensing or extreme refraction effects. In other words, we wouldn't be seeing the real object, but multiple distorted images of the same object, created by the curvature of space-time or by interactions with interstellar magnetic fields. This theory is more sophisticated, but also has problems. For such pronounced gravitational lensing effects to occur, you would need the presence of enormous masses between the observer and the observed object. Masses on the order of stars or even black holes. And there's no evidence of any massive structure in the regions where 3I Atlas has been detected. And then there's the third hypothesis, the most unsettling one. The one nobody wants to mention in official conferences, but that's discussed privately, in hallway conversations, in emails without official responses. The hypothesis of artificial replication. This theory proposes that 3I Atlas is not a natural object, that it's not a comet, nor an asteroid, nor any type of space geological formation, but rather that it is, or contains, some type of technology capable of projecting, replicating, or manifesting itself at multiple points in space simultaneously. It sounds like science fiction, I know, but consider the data. An object that appears in 5 different locations with the same spectral signature, geometric patterns on its surface, a uniform temperature that doesn't respond to solar radiation, a trajectory that already defied initial predictions when it entered the solar system. Some researchers have compared the phenomenon to the concept of quantum echoes at macroscopic scale. In quantum mechanics, particles can exhibit superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed. What if 3I Atlas is operating under similar principles but at a completely different scale? What if what we're seeing isn't an error or an optical illusion, but the true nature of an object that functions according to rules we don't yet understand? Others go further. They suggest that the multiple appearances could be holographic projections generated by technology of unknown origin. That 3I Atlas could be a probe, an observer, a device designed to study our solar system from multiple angles simultaneously. A kind of cosmic surveillance network operated by an intelligence that masters physical principles that we're barely beginning to imagine. What if the telescope isn't photographing the real object, but its projections on different dimensional layers of space? What if what we call 3I Atlas is just the 3-dimensional shadow of something that exists in more dimensions than we can perceive? Leave me in the comments which theory seems most convincing to you. Right, quantum echo, hologram, or multidimensional? I want to know what your intuition tells you when you analyze all this data. Now comes the part that really unsettles me. The part that makes all this go from being a fascinating scientific anomaly to something potentially concerning. According to multiple sources who worked on the initial image processing, there was something else in the original data, something we won't see in the November 3 publication because it was deliberately removed from the final versions. In the complete spectral analysis of 3I Atlas, there's a specific band of wavelengths that was cataloged as corrupted data and excluded from the official report. This band corresponds to far infrared frequencies, a range normally used to detect complex organic molecules and chemical signatures associated with biological processes. The technicians who initially identified this anomaly reported that, at those specific wavelengths, 3I Atlas emits an extremely regular radiation pattern. It's not the type of chaotic and random emission you'd expect from a natural object. It's structured, repetitive, with precise intervals that suggest some type of artificial periodicity. When this data was elevated to higher review levels, the response was immediate. Reclassify that information as instrumental noise and remove it from all public reports. No additional analysis was performed. No independent verification was requested. It was simply erased. Why? The official answer is that there wasn't enough confidence in the quality of that data to include it in serious scientific publications. But some of the researchers involved aren't convinced. One of them, in a private conversation that was later shared on specialized forums, said something that stuck with me. If they really thought it was just corrupted data, they would have tried to repeat the observation to rule out the error. Instead, they ordered that no one else point the telescope toward that specific region of the spectrum when observing 3I Atlas. Think about the implications of that. If there's something in those frequencies they don't want studied further, what could it be? What type of signal could be so concerning that the institutional response is simply to ignore it? And there's another detail that adds more mystery to all this. Every time engineers adjusted the exposure of the images to improve resolution, trying to capture more details of 3I Atlas's surface, the object appeared brighter in subsequent observations. Not a little brighter, significantly brighter, as if it were responding to being observed, as if the action of photographing it activated some type of luminous reaction. This completely contradicts the expected behavior of any passive object in space. Comets don't respond to being observed. Asteroids don't increase their brightness because a telescope is photographing them. But 3I Atlas seems to do so. And every time it happens, the infrared radiation levels in those corrupted frequencies also increase, following the same regular and structured pattern. There's a concept in science called paradigmatic anomaly. It's when a discovery challenges existing theories so fundamentally that the scientific community doesn't know how to incorporate it into established knowledge. Historically, these anomalies are ignored, dismissed, or reinterpreted until eventually enough evidence accumulates to force a paradigm shift. Einstein's theory of relativity was a paradigmatic anomaly. Quantum mechanics was another. Both were initially resisted because they required scientists to abandon fundamental assumptions about how reality works. Is 3I Atlas another paradigmatic anomaly? Are we witnessing something that will require us to rewrite the textbooks of physics, astronomy, perhaps even biology, if the implications are deep enough? Or maybe, just maybe, we're seeing evidence that we're not alone, that there are intelligences in the universe operating at scales and with technologies we can barely begin to understand, and that one of those intelligences has decided, for reasons only it knows, to visit our small corner of the cosmos. I know this may sound overwhelming. I know part of you might want to dismiss all this as exaggerated speculation, and I understand that reaction. It's much more comfortable to think that the universe is a predictable, understandable place where the laws of physics work exactly as we were taught in school. But the history of science has taught us again and again that the universe is much stranger, much more complex, and much more surprising than we ever imagined. Every time we build a more powerful instrument, we discover things we previously thought impossible. The James Webb was designed precisely for that, to see beyond what we'd never seen, to capture images from the most remote corners of the cosmos, to find answers to questions we didn't even know we should be asking. And now, perhaps, it has found something nobody was prepared to see. It's not the first time an interstellar object has generated controversy. Let's remember Oumuamua, the first confirmed interstellar visitor that crossed our solar system in 2017. Its elongated shape, its unexplained acceleration as it moved away from the sun, its extremely reflective surface. Everything about Oumuamua defied expectations. Even respected astrophysicists like Avi Loeb from Harvard publicly suggested it could be an artificial object, a solar sail of extraterrestrial origin. The scientific community generally rejected that interpretation, favoring natural explanations even though they required some creative assumptions about the object's composition and behavior. But the questions were never really answered. Oumuamua left our solar system as mysteriously as it had arrived, and with it went all opportunities to study it further. 3I Atlas is different. It's still here. We can still observe it. And with the James Webb, we have the capability to analyze it with unprecedented precision, which makes the decisions about what to observe, what to publish, and what information to share even more crucial. If there's something truly extraordinary about the nature of this object, this could be our only opportunity to document it before it too disappears into the vastness of interstellar space. Days remain. Only days until November 3rd, until the images are finally published and the world can see what the James Webb has captured. But based on everything I've told you, on the leaks, on the testimonies of researchers, on the patterns emerging from the available data, I believe there's something important you need to understand. What we're going to see on November 3rd won't be the complete story. It will be an edited, filtered version, presented in a way that minimizes impact and reduces uncomfortable questions. We'll see impressive images, no doubt. We'll hear technical explanations about chemical composition, orbital trajectories, comparisons with other known objects. Everything will sound professional, scientific, reassuring. But between the lines, in the data that won't be discussed, in the questions that journalists won't know to ask because they don't have access to the complete information, will be the true story of 3I Atlas. And that story is of an object that defies our categories, that violates our expectations, and that suggests possibilities that most people aren't yet ready to seriously consider. Write 3NOV in the comments if you're going to be watching for the publication. I want to know how many of you will be analyzing every detail of those images with me, looking for what's not being said, questioning the official explanations. This is the reality we live in now. A reality where humanity's most advanced instruments are detecting phenomena that don't fit our models of understanding. where objects from deep space behave in ways that seem to defy the fundamental laws of physics, where the line between the natural and the artificial, between the explicable and the inexplicable, becomes increasingly blurred. 3I Atlas isn't just an interstellar comet. It's a question, an enormous, unsettling, impossible to ignore question. And the answer, whatever it may be, is going to change something in us, in how we see the universe, in how we see ourselves within that universe. Maybe the November 3rd images will give us clarity. Maybe finally there will be a simple, natural explanation for all this. Maybe the experts will find a way to reconcile the observations with known physics, and we can all breathe relieved and move on. Or maybe, just maybe, those images will be the beginning of something much bigger. The first step in a revelation that will take years, even decades, to fully develop. The first solid evidence that the universe is even stranger than the most audacious visionaries dared to imagine. There's something poetic about all this, don't you think? We've spent centuries looking at the stars, wondering if we're alone, imagining what first contact with something truly alien to our experience would be like. And perhaps that moment won't come with spaceships descending over cities or with encrypted radio messages. Perhaps it will arrive more subtly, more confusingly, more ambiguously. A series of impossible images, an object that shouldn't exist behaving in ways that shouldn't be possible. And perhaps the most important question isn't, what is 3I, ATLS, but are we ready to know the answer? Because whatever it is, whatever the truth behind these anomalies may be, one thing is certain, on November 3rd, something will change. Maybe only in the way a few scientists understand a specific corner of astrophysics, or maybe in the way all of humanity understands its place in the cosmos. The coming days will tell us, or not, because maybe the true nature of 3I Atlas will remain a mystery long after the images are published. Maybe some mysteries are designed to remain unsolved, at least for now, at least until we're truly ready for the answers. But we'll be watching, analyzing, questioning, because that's what those of us who refuse to accept simple explanations do when the data suggests something deeper. 3I Atlas is out there, shining in multiple places at once, emitting signals that shouldn't exist, challenging us to expand our understanding or to admit that there are things in the universe we're simply not equipped to understand yet. Subscribe to the channel if you want to follow this story to the end. Leave me in the comments your definitive theory about what 3I Atlas really is. And above all, keep your eyes open on November 3rd, because whatever NASA shows us, whatever those images reveal or hide, it's going to be the beginning of conversations that will probably continue for a long, long time. Maybe we're witnessing history, or maybe we're just seeing the reflection of our desire for the universe to be more mysterious than it really is. But there's only one way to find out. Tell me what you think. Comment Atlas if you believe there's something NASA isn't telling us. And get ready for November 3rd, because something tells me that on that day, everything is going to change. Or maybe it already changed, and we simply haven't realized it yet. Somewhere in deep space, millions of kilometers from Earth, something is happening. The sensors of the MAVEN satellite, in orbit around Mars, have detected something that has put the entire international scientific community on maximum alert: an electromagnetic signal. But not just any signal. It's a transmission identical, pulse by pulse, frequency by frequency, to the one emitted just days ago by the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. The coincidence is mathematically impossible. The intensity, the pattern, the structure of the message, everything matches 100%. And the most unsettling thing about all this is that this signal is not floating randomly through the cosmos. No, it's traveling in a straight line with millimetric precision directly toward Mars. The latest orbital calculations indicate that on November 5th, this transmission will impact the Martian atmosphere. Astronomers from NASA, the European Space Agency, and private observatories around the world are baffled. No one knows exactly where it's coming from. No one can explain how a signal can replicate itself with such perfection. But all tracking models, all calculated trajectories, all origin analyses point to the same place: 3I Atlas, the object that arrived from outside the solar system, the silent visitor that now seems to be sending messages. Before continuing with this information, let me know in the comments what you think when you hear that an identical signal is being emitted toward another planet. Astronomical coincidence? A natural phenomenon we don't yet understand? Or something much more deliberate? Write the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name 3I Atlas, directed toward Mars. During the last few days, something changed in the behavior of 3I, Atlas. It wasn't gradual, it wasn't subtle, it was drastic. The object's electromagnetic activity increased exponentially, surpassing all previous records that observatories had captured since its discovery. First came the pulses synchronized with solar radiation, those strange patterns that seemed to respond, almost as if they were calibrating themselves every time a burst of solar wind reached its surface. Then came the anomalies detected by NASA, those energy readings that didn't match any known natural object, neither comets, nor asteroids, nor fragments of ancient planetesimals. And now, this. A perfect echo, an exact replica of its own signal traveling through the vacuum of space toward the red planet at a speed that defies any natural explanation. Electromagnetic waves don't behave this way on their own. They don't replicate complex structures. They don't direct themselves toward specific planetary targets without an intelligent source behind them. What makes all this even more disturbing is that Mars is not just any planet in terms of electromagnetic activity. In the past, missions like Mars Express and the MAVEN orbiter had detected unusual patterns of magnetic resonance in the Martian ionosphere, phenomena that scientists attributed to interactions between the solar wind and the remnants of the planet's ancient magnetic field. But this time is different. This time, the approaching signal doesn't come from the Sunday, it comes from an interstellar object. And it arrives with a code that, according to preliminary analyses, appears to have a deliberate structure. It's not cosmic noise, it's not background radiation, it's organized information. The European Space Agency's radio astronomy team was the first to confirm it. After weeks of analysis, of cross-comparisons between different radio telescopes distributed across the planet, the conclusion was unanimous. The frequency detected in the signal heading toward Mars is identical to the 13I Atlas emitted on November 1st. We're not talking about vague similarities or approximations. We're talking about an absolute coincidence. Every energy peak, every valley in the wave, every frequency modulation, everything fits with a precision that can only be described as impossible from the standpoint of natural phenomena. The signal has a particular structure, a pulse composed of 3 consecutive electromagnetic bursts, separated by an exact interval of 88 seconds between each one. 88 seconds, not 87, not 89. Exactly 88. This temporal precision doesn't exist in nature. Pulsars, those cosmic beacons that emit radiation regularly, have variations. Fast radio bursts, those mysterious outbursts that arrive from distant galaxies, are irregular. But this is different. This is a mathematical sequence. It's the same structure that NASA detected in the original message. That message they still haven't managed to decipher. That data set that remains classified on the Jet Propulsion Laboratory servers, and that only a handful of high-level researchers have been able to review. No known natural phenomenon, no star, no black hole, no stellar remnant can repeat such a precise sequence at this scale. Comets don't emit structured radio signals. Asteroids don't generate electromagnetic pulses with programmed intervals. And interstellar objects, until now, had only been frozen rocks or metallic fragments drifting aimlessly. But 3I Atlas doesn't behave like any of them. What if 3I Atlas isn't sending a message to Earth but to Mars? What if all this time we were looking in the wrong direction? What if the true recipient of the message was never us? But here's where the story gets even stranger. Because Mars isn't simply receiving the signal passively, it's responding. The ultraviolet radiation sensors aboard the ExoMars orbiter, a joint mission between the European Space Agency and Roscosmos, registered something completely anomalous just 72 hours ago. Unusual alterations in the Martian ionosphere, specifically in the upper layers of the planet's atmosphere, right in the region where charged particles from the solar wind interact with the remnants of the ancient magnetic field. But these alterations didn't coincide with any known solar pattern. There were no solar storms in progress. There were no coronal mass ejections directed toward Mars. However, the red planet's ionosphere was vibrating. And the most disconcerting thing of all is that, according to preliminary data, the planet appears to be reflecting part of the electromagnetic pulse, as if its atmosphere were acting as a mirror, bouncing the signal back toward its source of origin. Some researchers from the European Space Operations Center maintain that this reaction cannot be explained without assuming that there exists some type of bidirectional communication, that it's not just a signal arriving, but a signal being processed and responded to. Other scientists, more cautious, prefer to speak of a plasma resonance phenomenon, a natural interaction between electromagnetic waves and the ionosphere's plasma that, under very specific conditions, could generate that rebound effect. But even they admit they've never seen anything like this before. And then there's the third hypothesis, the one no one dares mention publicly at official conferences, but that circulates in specialized forums and private research groups. The possibility that 3I, Atlas, is using Mars as a bounce point to amplify its reach. As if the red planet weren't the final destination of the message, but a relay station. An intermediate node in a much larger communication network. A natural antenna that allows the signal to travel farther, arrive faster, reach something beyond our solar system. What if Mars isn't the destination, but the intermediary? What if what we're witnessing isn't a message directed at a planet, but the first step of a transmission chain connecting points in deep space that we haven't yet identified? But beyond the theories, beyond the speculations, there is a concrete and undeniable fact. On November 5th, something is going to happen. The orbital calculations performed by the Celestial Mechanics team at the European Southern Observatory indicate that the signal will reach the northern hemisphere of Mars exactly at 19 hours, 26 minutes, coordinated universal time. It's not an estimation. It's not a probability window. It's a precise mathematical prediction based on the propagation speed of the electromagnetic wave, the distance between 3I, ATLAS, and Mars, and the object's current trajectory. NASA's radio telescopes, specifically the Deep Space Network with its 3 stations distributed in California, Spain, and Australia, are already aligned to record the interaction in real time. The European Space Agency has also reconfigured its deep space antennas to capture every detail of the event, and they're not the only ones. Private observatories, universities, astrophysics institutes around the world are preparing to observe. Because if the pulse maintains the same sequence, if those 3 bursts with 88-second intervals are replicated upon entering contact with the Martian atmosphere, then there will be no room for doubt. It will be definitive confirmation that 3I Atlas emits directed messages, messages with specific destinations, messages that are not random. And if that's true, if we're really facing intentional communication, then Mars would become the first planet in the solar system to receive, in a verifiable and documented manner, a signal of unknown origin. It wouldn't be a rumor. It wouldn't be ambiguous data. It would be an event recorded by multiple instruments, analyzed by dozens of independent scientific teams, impossible to deny. Now I ask you, what do you think will happen when that signal touches Mars' atmosphere? Leave me your theory in the comments. Will it simply be an electromagnetic interaction without consequences? A natural phenomenon we don't yet fully understand? Or will it be something more? A response? An activation? Write the word Atlas if you want me to continue investigating every detail of this event. But while we wait for that moment to arrive, while the telescopes align and scientists review their equations over and over again, there's something we cannot ignore. Something that has been present from the beginning, but that now takes on a completely new meaning. 3I, Atlas is not a common object. Since its discovery, several weeks ago, its behavior has defied all expectations. First was its trajectory. Gravitational models indicated it should have moved away from the Sun, following a classic hyperbola, the natural curve that all interstellar objects follow when passing near a star. But it didn't. It accelerated. It slightly changed its course, enough for astronomers to notice the anomaly, but not so much that it was immediately obvious. Then there were its physical characteristics. Infrared telescopes showed that its surface didn't reflect light in the expected manner. It didn't have the diffuse glow of a comet covered in ice. It didn't show the tail of gas and dust that forms when an icy object approaches the sunday. Its albedo, its ability to reflect light, was strangely low, almost as if it were covered in an absorbent material, something that didn't fit with the composition of known comets. And now, these signals, these electromagnetic pulses that shouldn't exist, that defy everything we know about how natural objects behave in space. Some astronomers have begun to speak privately about the possibility that 3I, Atlas, isn't a comet at all, that its shape, its movement, its electromagnetic activity are indications of something constructed, not formed by natural processes, but designed, manufactured, sent. It's a hypothesis that sounds like science fiction, I know. But when all natural data fails, when no conventional explanation manages to account for what's observed, then you have to consider the improbable. Not as a certainty, but as a possibility that deserves to be investigated. Let's remember that it wouldn't be the first time an interstellar object generates this type of speculation. In 2017, when Oumuamua traversed our solar system, scientists were perplexed by its elongated shape, its unexplained acceleration, its lack of cometary emissions. Astronomer Avi Loeb from Harvard University publicly proposed that Oumuamua could have been a solar sail, an artificial structure designed to travel between the stars propelled by radiation pressure. The scientific community criticized him harshly. They called him sensationalist, but no one could refute his calculations. And now, years later, we have 3I ATLAS, an object that not only has anomalies in its movement, but also emits signals, structured signals, signals that seem to have a purpose. Is it possible that both objects are related? Is it possible that they're part of the same mission, the same project, the same interstellar exploration network? We don't know, not yet, but on November 5th we could start to have answers. Because if the signal reaches Mars and something happens, anything that can be measured, documented, analyzed, then we'll no longer be talking about coincidences. We'll be talking about evidence, and evidence changes everything. It forces us to rewrite the models. It forces us to reconsider the assumptions. It forces us to accept that perhaps, just perhaps, we're not as alone as we thought. That the universe is not an empty desert devoid of life and intelligence, but a place where other beings, other civilizations, other forms of consciousness are also exploring, communicating, leaving traces. And if that's true, if we're really witnessing the first signs of interstellar communication, then the question is no longer whether we're alone. The question is, what are they trying to tell us? What information does that message contain that NASA still can't decipher? Is it a warning? Is it an invitation? Is it simply a cosmic hello, a signal that someone else is out there looking at the stars like us? Or is it something much more complex, something our minds aren't yet prepared to understand? There's a theory, unofficial, that circulates among some researchers who prefer to remain anonymous. A theory that suggests 3I ATLAS could be an autonomous probe, an intelligent device designed to explore stellar systems, gather information, and transmit it back to its point of origin. Under this scenario, the signals we're detecting wouldn't be messages directed at us or at Mars, but data reports. Information being sent through space, using planets as transmission nodes, taking advantage of their atmospheres and residual magnetic fields to amplify electromagnetic waves. Mars, with its ionosphere and its remnants of ancient magnetism, would be a perfect repeater, a natural amplifier that allows the signal to travel much farther than it could on its own. If this theory is correct, then what we're observing is not an isolated event. It's part of an infrastructure, of an interstellar communication network that already existed long before we developed the ability to detect it. A network that connects stars, planets, objects in transit, an invisible, silent network that has been functioning for thousands, perhaps millions of years, without anyone on Earth knowing of its existence. Tell me in the comments which theory convinces you most. Do you believe 3I ATLAS is a natural object with properties we don't yet understand? Or do you believe we're facing something designed, something artificial, something sent with a specific purpose? And what if NASA already knows? What if they already have the answers, but decided not to share them because they still don't know how to handle the implications? Because that's also possible. It wouldn't be the first time a space agency withholds information for reasons of national security, scientific protocol, or simply because they don't know how to communicate a discovery of this magnitude without causing panic or misinterpretations. NASA has specific protocols for this type of situation. The SETI protocol, the set of international directives for handling signals of possible extraterrestrial origin, establishes that any detection must be independently verified by multiple institutions before being publicly announced. And that takes time, weeks, months, even years. Meanwhile, the general public goes on with their lives without knowing that something transcendental could be happening in silence. But rumors leak. They always leak. And in this case, the leaks have been consistent. Anonymous sources within NASA, internal emails that appeared on specialized forums, private conversations between astronomers that were later shared. Everything points to there being more information than is being officially shared. That the analyses of 3I ATLAS's original message revealed something they're not yet ready to disclose. that the simulations of what could occur on November 5th have generated results so unexpected that they prefer to wait for concrete evidence before making public statements. And that brings us back to the beginning, to November 5th, to the exact moment when the signal will touch the Martian atmosphere. Because that event, that interaction, could be the missing piece of the puzzle, the definitive confirmation that something extraordinary is happening. Or, conversely, it could be proof that all this is nothing more than a series of cosmic coincidences, natural phenomena misinterpreted, patterns that our minds anxious to find meaning have constructed where there is none. But even if it's that, even if it turns out that 3I ATLAS is simply a strange comet with unusual properties, the mere fact that we've asked ourselves these questions, that we've considered these possibilities, is already significant, because it demonstrates that we're ready, that as a civilization, as a species, we're prepared to face the possibility that we're not alone, that there's something beyond our small blue planet, that the universe is much more complex, much more mysterious, and much fuller of life than we ever imagined. November 5th could become one of the most important dates in the history of space exploration, not for what we know, but for what we might discover. For the first time, a signal coming from deep space, from an object that doesn't belong to our solar system, could directly connect with a neighboring planet. For the first time, we would have documented, verifiable, reproducible evidence of a communication that goes beyond our Earth. No one knows for certain what will happen when the signal touches the Martian atmosphere. No one can predict if there will be a response, a reaction, an activation of something that has been dormant for eons. Scientists have their models, their equations, their predictions, but the universe has a habit of surprising us, of showing us that, no matter how much we study, no matter how much we learn, there will always be something more. There will always be a deeper mystery waiting to be discovered. And if 3I Atlas is really communicating, if it's really sending directed messages through the solar system, using planets as transmission nodes, then the answer will no longer be an abstract mystery. It will be a concrete message. It will be information. It will be the first indirect but verifiable contact with an intelligence that is not human, with something that came from the stars, with something that is observing us, studying us, perhaps trying to communicate in a way we're only beginning to understand. The clock is ticking. Hours, days remain until that moment arrives. And when it arrives, the whole world will be watching. The telescopes will be aligned. Scientists will be monitoring every frequency, every pulse, every anomaly. The servers of space agencies will be processing terabytes of data in real time. And we, here on Earth, will be waiting for a response, waiting for confirmation, waiting to discover if what we've been seeing during these weeks is the beginning of something much bigger. Because maybe, just maybe, 3I Atlas isn't just an object passing by. Maybe it's a messenger. Maybe it's a test. Maybe it's the first chapter of a story that's just beginning. A story that will forever change our understanding of the universe, our place in it, and the infinite possibilities that exist beyond the borders of our small solar system. And if that's true, then November 5th won't be just a date on the calendar. It will be the day we stop being alone. The day the silence of the cosmos was broken. The day we received confirmation that someone else is out there, looking toward us, sending signals, waiting for someone, somewhere, to be listening. Perhaps in the coming days we'll have the answers we've been looking for. Or perhaps 3I Atlas only came to remind us that there's still much, so much we don't know. That the universe is vast, ancient, and full of secrets we're only beginning to unravel. If you want to stay up to date with every new piece of data about this object, every update, every analysis that emerges after November 5th, subscribe to the channel. And above all, leave me a comment telling me which theory seems most believable to you. Do you believe the signal will reach Mars and nothing will happen? Or do you believe we're about to witness the most transcendental event in human history? A simple scientific coincidence, or the first indirect contact with another intelligence? The answer is about to be revealed, and you're going to be here, with me, when it happens. At this very moment, more than 4 billion kilometers from Earth, the most advanced space telescope ever built is preparing to look towards something that technically shouldn't be there. Astronomers have just confirmed a new observation, scheduled for November 7th. The James Webb Telescope will once again point toward 3I Atlas, the enigmatic interstellar object that has kept the scientific community on alert for weeks. But this time, the protocol is different. This time it won't search for the object directly. but for something far more disturbing: what travels behind it. The latest spectral analyses have revealed the presence of a shadow that, according to our current physical models, shouldn't exist. A luminous distortion that appears to move in perfect synchrony with 3I, Atlas, always maintaining the same distance, always at the same angle. If the data collected during the last 72 hours are correct, the Webb could be about to record the first verifiable evidence of an invisible structure moving through the interstellar void. And when I say structure, I'm not referring to a known natural phenomenon. I'm referring to something that until now only existed in the realm of theoretical speculation. Before I delve deeper into what's really happening up there, I need you to do something for me. Leave me in the comments the first thing you think when you hear these words: interstellar object, invisible shadow, emergency observation. Write whatever comes to mind. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes could completely change your perspective on what we think we know about deep space. For exactly 9 days now, the spectral analysis sensors of the James Webb Telescope have been detecting something unusual. This isn't a technical failure or common cosmic interference. The engineers at the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore verified it 3 times. We're talking about a minimal but absolutely constant variation in the background brightness of space near 3I, Atlas. To understand the magnitude of this, think of space as a uniform black canvas dotted with luminous points. Now imagine that one of those points begins to flicker with a pattern that doesn't correspond to any cataloged astronomical phenomenon. We're not talking about random fluctuations. The light intensity curves show a rhythmic, almost organic change, as if an invisible mass were deliberately interfering with the light coming from background stars. The project technicians, after days of analysis and closed meetings, decided to assign a name to the phenomenon. They called it Shadow 47. The number isn't arbitrary. It refers to the exact angular position where this anomaly was first detected, at 47 degrees from the apparent rotation axis of 3I, ATLS. And now comes the part that's keeping astrophysicists awake in 3 different continents. On November 7th, at 3 o'clock in the morning Coordinated Universal Time, the James Webb Telescope will execute an observation maneuver that wasn't in the mission's original plans. During an extended exposure period of nearly 4 hours, the telescope will point its most sensitive infrared instruments toward the region of space where that shadow should be. Not toward 3I, Atlas directly, toward whatever's behind it. The observation protocol includes the simultaneous use of the near-infrared spectrograph and the mid-infrared camera, 2 instruments that normally aren't activated together due to the energy consumption involved. This only happens when scientists consider they're facing something exceptional, something that justifies the operational risk and expenditure of limited resources. The question that no one at NASA is answering publicly is simple but terrifying in its implications. What do they really expect to find? To understand the true nature of what's occurring, we need to return to the original data. Detailed analysis of images captured between October 28th and November 2nd shows something that contradicts our current understanding of celestial mechanics. Behind 3I, Atlas, in a region of space that should be perfectly transparent, the sensors are detecting a secondary source of gravitational distortion. Now, gravitational distortion isn't something strange in astronomy. In fact, it's the principle behind the gravitational lensing effect, a phenomenon that Einstein predicted and that we routinely use to study distant galaxies. When light from a distant object passes near an enormous mass, say a black hole or a galactic cluster, that light bends, deforms, creating characteristic patterns that we can measure and analyze. But here's the problem that has experts baffled. The distortion pattern detected behind 3I, Atlas, perfectly matches the cosmic lens effect, but on a completely wrong scale. The light curvature is too pronounced for the amount of visible mass that 3I, Atlas has, but simultaneously too localized to be caused by a traditional massive object like a dwarf star or a wandering black hole. Calculations performed by the astrodynamics team at the European Southern Observatory indicate that to produce that specific type of distortion, you would need an object with approximately 0.0001% of solar mass, but compressed into a volume no larger than 100 cubic meters. That's physically impossible according to our current models of degenerate matter, unless we're not talking about conventional matter. Unless the distortion doesn't come from mass in the traditional sense, but from something fundamentally different. An exotic energy field, a localized accumulation of dark matter, or, and this is where the conversation becomes really unsettling, an artificial structure capable of manipulating space-time in ways we're only beginning to theorize. Some researchers, speaking under condition of anonymity, have suggested that the anomaly could be an extension of 3I, Atlas's own structure. Not a separate object, but a kind of field generated by the main object, as if we were seeing only the visible part of something much larger. Think about this for a moment. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't really a comet or an interstellar asteroid as it was initially classified? What if what we see is simply the outer portion of a more complex architecture, something designed to travel between stellar systems in a way we don't yet fully understand? I'm not suggesting hasty conclusions. I'm raising the same questions that scientists are asking themselves privately, far from carefully worded official statements. Because when you eliminate all conventional explanations, when you discard instrumental errors and known interferences, what remains is something that defies our current taxonomy of the universe. Tell me in the comments which theory seems most convincing to you so far. Do you think this is a natural phenomenon we simply haven't cataloged yet? Or do you think we're facing something that requires a more radical explanation? Write Shadow if you want me to delve into the technical details of the spectroscopic analysis in the next video. Now comes the event that precipitated the emergency observation on November 7th. This is crucial to understanding why the astronomical community is on maximum alert. On November 6th, approximately 18 hours before the scheduled observation window, the infrared detectors of the Spitzer Space Telescope, which is technically in hibernation mode but maintains some active sensors, registered something completely anomalous. For exactly 27 minutes, between 9:52 and 10:19 Universal Time, there was a massive spike of cold infrared radiation emanating from the region immediately behind 3I Atlas. When I say cold radiation, I'm referring to emissions in the wavelength range that we associate with extremely cold objects, close to absolute zero. But here's what's truly strange. That radiation wasn't coming from 3I Atlas itself. The James Webb sensors, which were monitoring the object at that moment, confirmed that the surface temperature of 3I Atlas remained stable throughout the entire event. The radiation was coming from behind, from that dark region where models predict the presence of Shadow 47. During those 27 minutes, it was as if something was absorbing thermal energy from the surrounding space, actively cooling a portion of the interstellar void. And then, as abruptly as it began, the phenomenon ceased. It simply disappeared without leaving a detectable trace, except for the readings recorded in the telemetry files of two independent telescopes. Scientists at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics are attempting to model what type of physical process could cause that behavior. Preliminary hypotheses include the possibility that 3I Atlas is releasing volatile material asymmetrically, creating a kind of invisible jet that interacts with the interstellar medium. But that explanation has serious problems. First, no increase in gases typical of cometary sublimation was detected. Second, the cooling pattern was too uniform, too controlled, to be the result of chaotic material expulsion. And third, the most unsettling of all, the exact duration of 27 minutes coincides with the calculated rotation period of 3I Atlas. It's as if the object or whatever travels with it had completed exactly one complete rotation while emitting that radiation. One rotation, one cycle, and afterward, absolute silence. Some theoretical astrophysicists are suggesting something that until a week ago would have sounded like second-rate science fiction. They're raising the possibility that Shadow 47 isn't a passive anomaly, but an active system, a mechanism that periodically activates to fulfill some specific function: energy transfer, communication, data processing, recalibration. The verbs I'm using sound technological because, frankly, we don't have other adequate terminology to describe what we're observing. When a natural phenomenon exhibits characteristics we normally associate with design systems, we either expand our definition of the natural, or we begin to consider explanations we've traditionally kept outside conventional scientific discourse. The connection between 3I Atlas and the anomaly accompanying it appears to be deeper than anyone initially anticipated. Telemetry data collected during the last 2 weeks shows that every time 3I Atlas experiences a change in its trajectory, even the almost imperceptible micro-corrections detected by precision tracking systems, Shadow 47 responds in a synchronized manner. There's no time delay, there's no adjustment phase, it's instantaneous, as if both elements were part of a single integrated system. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics in Germany have published a preliminary paper, not yet peer-reviewed, where they propose a mathematical model that treats 3I, Atlas and its shadow, as a coupled binary system. Not two separate objects orbiting each other, but two components of a unique structure connected by some type of field or force that we currently cannot directly detect. This model would explain several of the observed anomalies. It would explain the precision of the dynamic coupling. It would explain why the gravitational distortion is so localized. It could even explain the periodic cold radiation emissions if we assume the system requires regular energy transfers between its components. But it also raises a fundamental question that no one in the established scientific community wants to formulate publicly, although everyone is thinking it privately. What function would such a system serve? Why would an interstellar object need to be coupled to an invisible structure that manipulates space-time around it? The most conservative answer is that we don't know, that we're observing physical phenomena we simply haven't encountered before. The most provocative answer, the one keeping the most imaginative scientists awake, is that we're seeing exactly what we would expect to see if an artificial object were navigating interstellar space using technology based on principles we're only beginning to understand theoretically. Two bodies, a single movement, perfect synchronization. Is it really possible that this is the product of cosmic chance? Or are we finally observing direct evidence that we're not the only civilization that has developed the ability to cross the abyss between the stars? November 7th is more than a date on the astronomical calendar. It's potentially an inflection point in the history of our understanding of the universe. If the James Webb Telescope manages to capture clear and verifiable data of Shadow 47, if the instruments confirm that there really is something there exerting gravitational influence without a conventional mass source, the implications are absolutely monumental. We're talking about the possible confirmation of physics beyond the standard model: exotic matter, manipulated dark energy, controlled distortions of space-time. Each of these possibilities would require a fundamental revision of theories that have been cornerstones of physics for decades. Scientists hope that the James Webb, with its unprecedented ability to capture subtle variations in the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum, can finally put an end to speculation and provide concrete data about the nature of this anomaly. The observation protocol that will be executed in the coming hours is extraordinarily ambitious. The telescope will perform a complete spectroscopic scan of the region surrounding 3I, Atlas, specifically searching for absorption and emission signatures that don't match any known element or chemical compound. Astronomers are particularly interested in detecting spectral lines that could indicate the presence of exotic states of matter, atomic configurations that only exist under extreme conditions of density and temperature. If Shadow 47 is truly a structure composed of matter that doesn't behave according to our current models, it should leave identifiable traces in the spectrum of light that passes through it or near it. It would be like finding fingerprints at a crime scene. Indisputable evidence that something was there, even if we can't see it directly. But there's another scenario, one that several researchers have mentioned with growing concern during the last 48 hours. What if, when the James Webb finally points its instruments toward the precise location where Shadow 47 should be, it finds absolutely nothing? I don't mean that the anomaly simply doesn't exist. I mean that it actively disappears just at the moment we try to observe it directly. Historical data from astronomical observations are full of transient phenomena that appear and disappear in apparently random ways. Gamma-ray bursts, hypothetical Thorne-Jitkow objects, radio signals from unknown sources that are detected once and never again. But this would be different. This would be an object or phenomenon that has maintained a constant and detectable presence for days, only to vanish precisely when we try to examine it with our most powerful instruments. That type of behavior would imply something deeply disturbing, that the anomaly is somehow aware of our observation, or at least capable of responding to it. I'm not saying that Shadow 47 is intelligent in the conventional sense, but if it were to disappear specifically when we try to study it, we would be forced to consider that it can detect when it's being observed and modify its behavior accordingly. That would transform the entire nature of the investigation. We would no longer be simply observing a passive natural phenomenon. We would be involved in a kind of interaction, a one-sided dialogue where our attempts at observation are part of the phenomenon itself. Some theoretical physicists have pointed out that this wouldn't be unprecedented in a certain sense. Quantum mechanics taught us a century ago that the act of observation can fundamentally affect the behavior of subatomic particles. Is it so far-fetched to think that something similar could operate at macroscopic scales under conditions we don't yet fully understand? The James Webb team is prepared for multiple contingencies. If the November 7th observation doesn't produce conclusive results, there are already plans for follow-up observations scheduled for later dates this same month. The international scientific community has expressed an unprecedented level of interest. Observatories in Chile, Hawaii, the Canary Islands, and Australia have coordinated their schedules to provide complementary observations from different angles and with different instruments. For the first time in years, we're seeing the type of global mobilization normally reserved for events like total eclipses or the passage of particularly bright comets. But this is different. This isn't about a visual spectacle. It's about data, about measurements, about trying to capture evidence of something that could redefine our place in the universe. Amateur astronomers are also playing a crucial role. Networks of private telescopes connected through online collaborative platforms are pointing toward 3I ATLAS, adding thousands of hours of observation time to the collective effort. Some of these observers have reported their own minor anomalies, brief flashes of light that appear near the object and disappear in a matter of seconds. These reports haven't been officially confirmed by the major space agencies, but they haven't been dismissed either. In some cases, multiple independent observers reported seeing the same flash at the same moment, which significantly reduces the probability that these are instrumental errors or local atmospheric effects. Each additional piece of evidence, however fragmentary, contributes to a more complete picture of what's really happening with 3I ATLAS and its mysterious shadow. The tension in the scientific community is palpable. Private conversations that have been leaked through specialized forums and discussion groups reveal a level of excitement and anxiety rarely seen in astronomical research. Some senior scientists are warning against excessive speculation, arguing that we must maintain rigorous scientific skepticism until we have verifiable data. Others, especially younger researchers less tied to established paradigms, are openly discussing the possibility that 3I ATLAS represents the clearest evidence to date of extraterrestrial technology in our solar system. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, but the mere fact that these conversations are occurring in respectable scientific institutions, that papers are being prepared to explore hypotheses that a decade ago would have been considered too speculative for serious publication, says a lot about how truly anomalous this object is. There are historical precedents worth remembering. In 2017, the interstellar object Oumuamua caused a similar sensation when it traversed our solar system, exhibiting unusual characteristics. Its extremely elongated shape, its inexplicable non-gravitational acceleration, the absence of coma or tail despite its proximity to the Sun, all of this generated intense debates about its nature. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb controversially proposed that Oumuamua could be an artificial artifact, perhaps a solar sail of extraterrestrial origin. The proposal was received with significant skepticism by most of the scientific community, but it also opened the door to more open discussions about how we should approach interstellar objects that exhibit characteristics difficult to explain with conventional models. Now, 8 years later, we're facing something even more enigmatic. 3I ATLAS doesn't just have unusual surface properties. It's apparently accompanied by a spatial anomaly that defies our most sophisticated measurement instruments. The crucial difference between Oumuamua and 3I ATLAS is time. Oumuamua passed swiftly through our solar system before we could conduct truly exhaustive observations. By the time the scientific community organized a coordinated response, the object was already too far and too faint to be studied in detail. We lost the opportunity. With 3I ATLAS, we have a broader time window. The object is still relatively close in astronomical terms, still bright enough to be observed with current telescopes, and its trajectory gives us weeks, potentially months, to conduct detailed studies. This time we can't afford to let the opportunity pass. This time we have to extract every bit of possible information before 3I ATLAS continues its journey into deep space, taking all its secrets with it. The technical challenges are formidable. Observing faint objects in deep space is always complicated, but trying to detect an anomaly that by definition doesn't emit its own light and only manifests through subtle effects on background light is extraordinarily difficult. It requires extremely long exposure times, sophisticated image processing, and the ability to distinguish genuine signals from instrumental artifacts and cosmic noise. The James Webb was designed specifically for this type of high-sensitivity observation, but even its capabilities are being pushed to the limit. Engineers have had to develop new data processing algorithms, specifically for the analysis of Shadow 47, techniques that could have applications in future searches for similar phenomena. What do you think the James Webb will discover when it finally looks directly toward that region of space? Write in the comments if you think we're going to find a natural explanation we simply didn't know, or if you think we're on the verge of a discovery that will fundamentally change our understanding of the universe. Your opinion matters because this is the type of moment where humanity collectively confronts the unknown, and we're all part of that discovery process. There are aspects of 3I, Atlas's behavior, that we haven't yet discussed in depth, but that add additional layers of mystery to the phenomenon. Preliminary spectroscopic analyses of the main object have revealed a surface composition that doesn't perfectly match any previously studied cometary or asteroidal body. There are traces of complex organic compounds, which isn't unusual in itself. Many comets contain organic molecules. But the proportions are strange, and there's presence of heavy elements in concentrations that are difficult to explain through standard planetary formation processes. Some researchers have suggested that 3I, Atlas, could have formed in a stellar system with significantly different metallicity from our Sun, which could explain its unusual composition. Others point out that certain aspects of its absorption spectrum suggest the presence of synthetic materials, although this is an extremely controversial claim that requires much more solid evidence before it can be taken seriously. The velocity and trajectory of 3I, Atlas, also continue to be the subject of intense scrutiny. When it was first detected, orbital calculations indicated that it came from the general direction of the constellation Andromeda, approaching our solar system with a hyperbolic velocity that confirmed its interstellar origin. But more recent observations have detected small but measurable deviations from the purely gravitational predicted trajectory. These deviations are much more subtle than those observed with Oumuamua, but they're definitely there. Models attempting to explain these microaccelerations through outgassing of volatile material have problems reproducing the exact observed pattern. It's as if 3I, Atlas, were making extremely precise course corrections, adjustments so small they're at the limit of our measurement capacity, but systematic enough to rule out randomness. This brings us back to the central question that has been implicit throughout this entire investigation. Are we observing an extraordinarily unusual natural phenomenon, or are we observing something designed? Occam's razor, the philosophical principle that suggests that among competing explanations, the simplest tends to be correct, would push us toward the first option. It's always more likely that we're encountering new natural phenomena than discovering evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations. The universe is vast and ancient, and most of its physical processes occur at scales of space, time, and energy that are far from our everyday experience. It's completely plausible that 3I, Atlas, and its accompanying shadow are manifestations of astrophysical processes we simply haven't observed before. Perhaps because they're extremely rare, perhaps because they require specific conditions that only occur in certain interstellar environments. But Occam's razor can also be misleading when we're faced with truly unprecedented phenomena. Sometimes the simplest explanation is inadequate, precisely because the phenomenon in question is fundamentally different from anything we've encountered before. The history of science is full of moments where researchers clung to conventional explanations for too long, refusing to consider more radical alternatives until the evidence became overwhelming. Meteorites were considered peasant superstition until we finally had to admit that rocks really do fall from the sky. Continental drift was ridiculed until the geological evidence became incontrovertible. Black holes were considered mathematical curiosities without physical reality until we started detecting them directly. Each of these cases teaches us scientific humility. The universe isn't obligated to conform to our expectations or prejudices. So where does this leave us as we await the results of the November 7th observation? In a state of productive uncertainty, I would say, we have sufficient data to know that something genuinely anomalous is occurring. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know it deserves serious and rigorous investigation. We have the tools to conduct that investigation. Telescopes like the James Webb, advanced ground-based instruments, collaborative networks of observers, data processing capabilities that would have been unimaginable just a decade ago. And we have, crucially, a scientific community that's paying attention, that's taking this seriously, that's prepared to follow the evidence wherever it leads us, even if it leads us to uncomfortable or conceptually challenging places. The coming days and weeks could bring clarity, or they could bring even deeper mysteries. It's completely possible that the November 7th observation will resolve the enigma of shadow 47 inches a relatively mundane way. We could discover that it's a complex optical effect caused by the interaction between the material 3I Atlas is expelling in the background interstellar dust. We could find that it's an unusual concentration of dark matter that happens to be on the same trajectory as the object. We could determine that our instruments were detecting an artifact in the data, something related to the way sensors process weak signals under certain conditions. All of these would be valid and scientifically satisfying explanations. Not every mystery has to have a dramatic resolution. Sometimes anomalies are simply the growing pains of a science that's constantly expanding its frontiers. But it's also possible that November 7th will be remembered as the day everything changed. The day we confirm that there are objects traveling through interstellar space that don't behave like anything we know. The day we detected the first indisputable evidence of technology beyond Earth. I'm not predicting this. I'm not claiming it's going to happen. I'm simply acknowledging that it's a possibility that's on the table. A possibility that serious scientists are considering as they prepare their instruments and plan their analyses. And if it turns out to be true, if we really are observing something artificial, navigating between the stars, the implications will extend far beyond astronomy. They'll affect our philosophy, our theology, our understanding of our place in the cosmos. They'll force us to confront questions that humanity has been posing for millennia, but now with concrete evidence instead of mere speculation. The official silence of the major space agencies throughout this process has been notable. NASA has issued extremely cautious statements, focusing on the technical aspects of the observation while carefully avoiding any speculation about the nature of the object. The European Space Agency has adopted a similar stance. Roscosmos has been even quieter, limiting itself to confirming that its facilities are monitoring the object but without providing details about its own findings. This type of caution is understandable from an institutional perspective. Space agencies have learned from experience that it's better to say very little than to risk premature statements that later have to be retracted or clarified. But that same silence also fuels speculation and alternative theories. When official institutions are reluctant to share information, even when that reluctance is methodologically justified, people naturally start wondering what's not being said. We need to be clear about something important. The fact that we're discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial technology doesn't mean it's the most likely explanation. Statistically, it's still much more likely that we're facing complex natural phenomena. But science advances precisely because we're willing to consider the entire range of possibilities, to evaluate hypotheses based on evidence rather than prejudices, and to adjust our conclusions as we obtain new data. The scientific methodology doesn't require that we dismiss exotic explanations a priori. It requires that we subject them to the same rigorous scrutiny we apply to any other hypothesis. If the artificial technology explanation can account for the data better than natural alternatives, then it deserves serious consideration, however uncomfortable that idea may be. One thing is certain: on November 7th, when the James Webb Telescope completes its extended observation of the region behind 3I Atlas, we won't be exactly in the same place we are now. We'll have more data, more information, a more complete picture. We may have answers, or we may have even better questions, but the discovery process will have advanced. And that is ultimately the goal of all scientific investigation: to expand the boundaries of the known, to push back the frontiers of ignorance, even if that process sometimes takes us to uncomfortable or unknown conceptual territories. Meanwhile, 3I Atlas continues its silent journey through the void, accompanied by its enigmatic shadow. Two forms moving in perfect synchrony, one visible, tangible, measurable, the other detected only by its effects on the light and space around it. As if the universe itself were protecting it from our direct view. As if there were secrets that will only be revealed if we ask the right questions, if we look at the precise moment, if we're prepared to accept the answers, no matter how strange they may be. November 7th could reveal more than a simple optical anomaly or an astronomical curiosity. It could demonstrate that what travels behind 3I Atlas isn't coincidence or cosmic chance, but part of a greater design, an architecture that transcends our current categories of natural versus artificial. A presence that remains just out of reach, moving between light and shadow, between the known and the unknown, waiting for the moment when we're finally ready to truly see it. Subscribe to the channel to receive immediate updates on what the James Webb discovers in the coming hours. I'll be monitoring the data in real time and will publish detailed analyses as soon as the information is available. And leave me in the comments what you think that shadow really is. A natural distortion of empty space caused by improbable concentrations of dark matter? An artifact in our instruments that we're misinterpreting as a real phenomenon? Or something fundamentally different? Something that's actively protecting the object, escorting it through the interstellar abyss toward destinations we can only imagine? Whatever it is, it's out there. Right now, moving through the void, and in a matter of hours, we're finally going to try to look it directly in the eyes.